Welcome to Horizons Person-to-Person podcast. Today we are meeting with Tina M. Wheeler, creator of the World Dyslexia. She's going to be talking about her experiences with dyslexia and how she overcame this diversity. Tina, why don't you explain to me what these beautiful sculptures on your walls were about?
Well, thank you. I decided to put 3D shapes on the wall because dyslexics often think in 3D images, and we can rotate those images in our heads. So
Gotcha.
I figure why not put the 3D shapes on the wall? And it's a good art piece as well, I believe. It's just kind of fun and different, but just a creativity too of dyslexic learners.
Does color help you see things easier? Like if text is done alternating colors, does that help with a dyslexic person at all?
It can, absolutely. Just highlighting in different colors helps you kind of pick out what's important, because the black and white text can be so overwhelming when reading. So yes, highlighting in different colors definitely helps. And some dyslexics, it helps a lot more than others. I've had dyslexic students where you put an overlay over the text and it just changes their world. And then others, it doesn't affect them as much. So it just depends on the dyslexic learner. It's really great to try different things and see what works. But it can really make a difference for sure.
I'm all about the colors. I was the person who had the textbooks all highlighted throughout school. I have processing delay, but I don't have dyslexia. So yes. Just putting the highlights over things made it so that I could see the text easier. And I also have a photographic memory sometimes. But that means I'll see where the answer is on the page, but not the answer itself, which is really frustrating.
Interesting.
It's like the text doesn't exist. The text isn't there, but like the line. Like I will see scribbles in my head of what the text, where that text is. And I'll see the whole page. Like pictures, I can see no problem. Like I can duplicate a picture, but the text is like nothing. It doesn't exist. So it's really frustrating.
Yes, absolutely. That's the difficulty with dyslexia, is the text. And you can probably imagine, you can see a room full of furniture and you can duplicate that in your head. But the text is so difficult. And even, like you said, pictures is something that you remember. I'm a big picture person. I love to take pictures, probably for that reason, just because, I can see those pictures more than words in my brain. So it's really important to me.
I can't memorize.
Interesting.
I can't, so I love acting, but I can't memorize. Everything is jumbled in my head. So it's that's what I love about VR, because I don't have to memorize. I can read the text underneath my nose. Because my acting is fine. My acting is fine, and I keep the text really big. I print it on my computer at 26 points so that I can see it.
Nice. And that's really important. Yeah, memorization is so hard, and especially math facts. I don't know if you had trouble with math facts.
No, actually, that was the one. Yeah, so like I said, it's a processing, but it's a different kind of processing than... I don't have dyslexia. It's just a processing issue. Whereas my daughter has the typical dyslexia, and it also affects her auditory and short-term memory. She has like the more profound dyslexic type. Because it affects all aspects, and there isn't a really good workaround for her. She still uses cards to read lines of text when she's reading.
Yes. It's so difficult. For some dyslexics, memorizing multiplication facts, the harder facts are very difficult to remember. Even into adulthood, I can say that it's difficult to remember the multiplication facts, but thankfully we can accommodate for those things now. Yeah, we can use technology to help us. So that's the amazing part nowadays that students have available on their phones mostly. I mean, you can use any app or, device to help with those things.
I noticed you label your spaces, which is great. I wanted to ask, well, we're building our worlds to make sure they are more inclusive. I use a lot of text. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to change my colors so that they're alternating so you can see them easier. So that should help some people. Obviously, colorblind people will have a harder time with that. But does labeling in a specific way help at all? Like, if we're going to be using text in worlds, is there a better way for us to do the text? Is it bigger? Is it more spacing? How should we, help you and others like you who have dyslexia?
Absolutely. Bigger text is always good. It's always great to have the bigger text, and also to big words are great and we're able to understand them, but sometimes decoding those really long big words is difficult for a dyslexic learner. So maybe use a shorter word that's easier to decode on the wall would be easier for them. For us, I say I'm dyslexic as well. And so that would be good. Also, if there's a trigger that you could use, and recording would also be good, because that would help a lot of different people.
Yes, I do that too. I try and use voice and text, although there are limitations, and I'm running into some of that. Like, in one world I have all text for the meditation, in another world I have all audio, because typing in all the text is difficult and recording all the sound blocks is difficult. So it's like I've had to pick and choose. Like, one world has text and one world has audio, and hopefully I get there. I have a hard time typing, like this with the two fingers. So that's, yeah. But I want to be more inclusive in my worlds.
Absolutely. And one thing that would be helpful for dyslexic in Horizon or in VR is the predictive text, the autocorrect text, also when typing. So when we're typing words, I have to sometimes take off my headset and go and try to find out, I'll Google on my phone, oh, how do you spell that? And so to have it correct before I publish. So that's really hard. And going from my phone to the headset and then going back to my phone and the headset, because it's hard to remember several letters in a row.
Right.
So sometimes I have to go back and forth quite a bit to find the correct spelling. So that's one thing that would be helpful. That's something to suggest. But
what about collaboration? When I mean, all of us love to. Well, most of us. I shouldn't say all of us, but a good number of us like to collaborate on other worlds.
Yes.
Do you find that maybe having a collaborator do some of the text for you, you say what you want, and then they type it in, does that help, or does that make you feel more frustrated?
Oh, not at all. I love collaboration, and if somebody's willing to do that, I really think that it's very helpful for them to do that. So that's definitely something that I would be welcome to have, but someone else may not feel comfortable asking. It's just how open you are with your dyslexia or your disability is how comfortable you might be with that. But I would definitely welcome that for sure, the collaboration and help. So,
it's a hard subject to approach because, I'm disabled, physically disabled, and, in VR you can't tell that. But there are people who say, oh, should I have said to me, should I open the door for you or not open the door for you when I meet someone like yourself? Or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same kind of feeling I have when I come up to a person who has any kind of other issue that I don't understand. Because while I welcome the help with doors especially, or, just things that I can't do well, I like the help, but other people feel like that's more, that frustration level that they get really overwhelmed by that kind of thing. So it's important to talk about, I think.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And, some people are just I've been open about my dyslexia for a long time. So, but people that may have found out later in life, they may have more, more shame about it because they didn't get help and they were frustrated, and there's no shame in it, but I also don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable talking about it when they don't want to. So that's kind of important to think about too. Not everyone's open.
Yeah, well, that's one of the hopes I have with this video, is that when people see this video, that they might know that you're a safe person to talk to, or I'm a safe person to talk to, because, you know, while I don't have the same things, I have relatable things, you know, and sometimes having that person you can relate to is so helpful. And in this space over here, I noticed earlier, it's just a really fun little club scene. At least I view it like a club scene. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh,
so, what is your goal in this room? I mean, it's a club and it says, say dyslexia. Are you looking to have like conversations in here about dyslexia? Or is this just a fun hangout and it happens to say dyslexia here?
I was really planning this space to be a place for people to come and hang out and talk about, maybe just hang out, like-minded people, dyslexics, ADHD, you know, just anyone that feels comfortable discussing their disability, would be awesome to come and have events here. I've been really thinking about that lately, is having events, where we can gather and just hang out and talk and share our stories. You know, it just takes a conversation to get people to open up sometimes. You know, oh yeah, I had trouble with reading in school, or oh yeah, spelling was difficult. So this is kind of a fun party space too, where we can just have fun and hang out, enjoy each other's company.
It's beautiful. I love it. It's nice and open, and it's bright, and it just, like, I really wish I could just, you know, we had enough people here so I can go dance on the dance floor. I love club spaces in VR. So
yes, they're so fun.
When I was here earlier, I noticed something, and this is really important for me, and I don't know how many people realize it. We can all jump around fairly easily in VR with our jump buttons and things like that. But people who are disabled, like I am, physically disabled, stairs, even though I don't have to walk, they visually cause that anxiety, you know? So when I saw you have this beautiful ramp here, I was like, wow, you know, this is exactly, you know, having options like stairs and ramps and elevators make it so much more comfortable for different people with different, you know, abilities, disabilities, however you want to word it. Because, yeah, when I'm in a wheelchair, you know, there was a bathroom and it had the tiniest little lip, okay, and it had a giant heavy door. And I was and I didn't have any strength in my arm to open the door and pull my wheelchair through, because I had to get over that bump. You know, and people don't think about that. So at least in here, it's just a little tiny bump and you're over, you know, and it's not a big deal. But it's amazing how, like, visually, like, I see the ramp, I'm like, oh yes, a ramp, you know, and I can just run down this little ramp and not worry about the skipping, you know, that skipping motion that happens on stairs when you're in VR. It causes that same kind of anxiety for me because I have balance issues, so I feel that balance issue, you know.
Wow.
Because it becomes a learned behavior, is unfortunately, you know what I mean. You have a perceived memorization of how things are going to happen, how things are going to feel, because of how you've experienced them so many times. So even though you're in VR, you still have some of these same physical expectations, you know. And so it's Yeah, so it's really interesting. And so when I saw your ramp, I was like, yes, ramps. Love ramps.
That's
Love
amazing. I'm so
elevators.
glad you. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. Yeah. Yeah.
Not everybody has that extreme. It's just because I've gone from being physically very able to being disabled. It's maybe
Mm,
more of a jarring thing for me than is for somebody else, you know. Um,
absolutely.
and that's why it's so important to build worlds like yours. And I love this. Explore, create, follow your dreams. What
Mm.
wonderful, wonderful positive affirmations.
No, thank you. Yeah, I try to stay really positive. Dyslexia can be hard, and I know any disability can be difficult. So if you stay, positive with it, and really find your strengths, because everybody has a strength and something that they're good at, or something that they do well. That's so important, because we have our weaknesses and we can focus on that, but really to focus on your strengths is where you're going to find your happiness and your joy. So that's what I recommend for everyone.
That's
So
awesome.
follow your dream. Yeah, absolutely. And I tell my students that, they get so down and they call it they call themselves dumb, they call themselves stupid all
Yeah.
the time, and I'm like, no, you are not those things, and we will not say that in my classroom, because you are so good at, and I'll remember what they're good at, a
Mm-hmm.
sport, or some of them are amazing at math or science, and so I remind them of those things all the time, and they start to smile, and I'm like, okay, we're getting we're getting somewhere today. So just to get that little bit of, okay, I'm going to be okay today. That's what drives me. So not just for myself, but for my students and everyone that has a disability. So
Is it the
yeah.
Serenity Prayer? I can't remember. And it's something to do with just for today. Just for
Yes.
today, I will. Just for
Mm,
this minute, I will. And I want to say it's a Serenity Prayer, but I'm not 100% sure. I just remember hearing that
mm-hmm.
and saying that to myself so many times. Just for today. I will
Yes.
get through today, So, yeah, I can totally get
Absolutely.
that. And kids, oh, I
Yes.
feel so bad for kids because they hear all of these terrible things, and there's so many expectations on kids for grades. And I don't want
Yes.
kids to be made soft. And
Right.
that's not the right word for it. I don't know what is, but um, some days I'm like, why do we have to do that? Why do we have to put a
Mm-hmm.
grade on something that's just going to further put them into a negative space? And yes,
Yes.
I understand kids have to work hard. They have to do their
Right.
homework. They have to study. But there's got to be something different for kids who learn differently, you
Yes,
know?
and I know dyslexics
Right.
can they can do it. So we want to push them to, but not push them too far where they get super frustrated. So we want to
Yeah.
encourage them. I don't let them say I can't. I don't let them say I can't because I'm dyslexic. I can't do this. It's we're gonna try to do this. I'm gonna try this today. We're gonna practice it today. And practice doesn't mean that you're gonna get an A, or I'm gonna give you a grade for this. We practice, and practice makes us better at what we're learning. And even, like, I relate it to a sport that they play. You don't go on the soccer field and just be an amazing soccer player. Most people, you have to practice. And so that's what we do, is we practice reading and spelling. And it's not for a grade, it's to improve ourselves, not to compare to anyone else. So that's really important too. I
Yeah.
totally agree
I,
with.
I love your
Yeah.
methodology with kids. You are an
Mm.
inspiration. I wish there were more teachers like you.
Aw, thank you so much.
If my daughter had a teacher like you, she would have learned to read before fourth grade.
Aw.
So this world has dream on
Thank
the
you.
outside, this part of the world. is there a specific reason why this section has dream? Oh, the stars and the moon.
Yeah, just the outdoors at night, and just, you can sit and stargaze and just dream about your strengths in the future. And I never stop dreaming because we're never done. There's always something more that we could do, or something better we could do, or something that we could move forward in. So just don't stop dreaming. Even when things are hard, we can still dream and think about what we want to do in the future, because we can follow our dreams and be what we want to be, and whatever that is. It doesn't have to be what everyone else says that we'll have to be, but it's our dream, and we're gonna be successful and do that. So that's kind of, I love this space. This is one of my favorite spaces.
I wanted to say hi, Benjaboo. Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, that's wonderful.
This is a great space. So I know you have another dyslexic world that you've created. Do you mind doing a hop to that world?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
So if you want to tell me about what we're seeing here.
Okay, so this is a book, and it's open, and it has reading and spelling on the front. And if you look on the top of it, there are these letters, B, D, P, and Q. And all of my students who are dyslexic get these flipped around. They look exactly the same, upright, sideways. When you give them plastic letters to put in alphabetical order, they always get these mixed up. And they're like, is this a B? Is this a P? Or is it a Q? It's very, very confusing to them. So that's one of the aspects of dyslexia. And a misconception is that dyslexics see letters backwards, which is not always the case. But these letters often give dyslexic learners a lot of trouble. And so I built this as a series of tunnels, and it kind of takes you on a journey through my story of dyslexia growing up as a kid. And so we can go through if you want.
Yes, of course.
Tour the world.
Yeah, I'd love you to explain each aspect, so that way people who can't come to your world because they're not in Horizon yet can experience what you've created. And
awesome, yes.
The best person to tell us about your world is you.
So here are the letters again. They're turned sideways this time because, again, they all look alike to many dyslexics. And we learn to tell them apart. And over time, a dyslexic will learn to tell these apart. But to be completely honest with you, as an adult, I still get the B and D sometimes mixed up. And I will even write it on the board, and I'll say, oh, my students will say, Miss Wheeler, that's a B. Oh, you're right, and I'll erase it and I'll fix it. Most of the time I do fix it myself, but some occasionally, sometimes I don't. So the P and the Q I don't get mixed up, but the B and the D sometimes still get me.
Does using your hands on your left hand for the B and the right hand for the D help at all?
No, because to be honest, they look alike to me.
Oh.
I mean, I do make
because that's what I was taught when I was having trouble.
But sometimes I don't remember what my left and my right hand. I have to really think about that as well.
Gotcha.
Even as an adult, I get left and right sometimes mixed up. So
okay.
I'm like, is it the left hand that's a B? Is the right hand that's a B? And I have learned over time to tell them apart, but my students still will struggle. Even the fifth graders will struggle with that occasionally. So it is helpful for most students, but a lot of times some dyslexic students it doesn't help too much. It's really interesting just because of the way we think differently. And I call it a different way of thinking.
No, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. So the next tunnel is a series of shapes. Again, the shapes, just like in the other world, these shapes are all rotated different directions because we can see a shape in our brain and rotate it and see all the sides and all the dimensions, and without having it in our hands, we can see that shape in our brain. So that's kind of the first thing that we notice with a dyslexic learner. I'll ask them in class, I'll say, can you see things in your mind and rotate them around and see all the angles and the shapes? And they all say yes. So it's really neat. And I tell them, not all people can do that, and they're just shocked because they don't think any other way. Many of my dyslexic students, I've asked to see their sketch pads, and they're just amazing at art, and I'm just amazed as what they're way better than me. I'm not, an artist, but they are just amazing. Some of them are just amazing. So it's really neat to see that. Okay, this is a classroom, and my dyslexic journey started in the first memories I have of reading being very difficult was in first grade. And the first cloud over here and the tears coming out of the cloud on the book, my teacher would ask me to read out loud.
So reading out loud is, these are tears coming out of the cloud.
Yes. Reading out loud in first grade and reading group was very, very difficult for me. I didn't know where they were on the page. I couldn't decode the words. I repeated first grade. I was in first grade 2 times and taught the same way. Nothing changed because, I was just a year older, so I was a little bit more mature, but that was about it. So I didn't know what was wrong. My parents didn't know. Of course, they didn't test students for dyslexia back then either. So I had no idea. Spelling was also extremely difficult. The spelling test and studying for spelling was the hardest part of the week for me, all the way through elementary school. And then there's the letters that look alike as well. I just did not feel smart at all. Even though the opposite was true, I just didn't feel that way because every subject has reading. Even math nowadays has reading word problems. And so everything affects reading and spelling affects every subject. So that's kind of how you feel in early elementary school.
So here we have dyslexia, 3D thinking, smart and creative. Exactly.
Yeah, and
I love that.
So you go from the sadness of school, and then you realize that you are smart, you're creative, you think in 3D, and you don't find that out until after you're identified. And I was identified in 5th grade. So I went all the way to 5th grade, and going into middle school even. I was remediated through middle school. So I went to a dyslexia interventionist for 3 years in middle school, and that really helped. But once you learn about dyslexia, it's such a relief of I am not these things that are on this chalkboard. I am smart, and I have strengths to go with weaknesses, and that's the best part about dyslexia. So
the first time I heard the term dyslexia, I want to say it was Silver Spoons, the TV show Silver Spoons. And the fact that I remember this and it hasn't been on, I haven't seen a repeat of it, means that episode really stuck. And then later on, I think Huxtable, the older boy, I can't remember his name now. The Cosby Show, I think is what the TV show is called. But I think he was later diagnosed with dyslexia. So there's 2 different shows. Yep, Silver Spoons and Bill Cosby. So both of those episodes stuck with me, even though it wasn't related to me per se. It was just like, wow, And I was even back then, I remember going, wow, that's really good that they're able to help, And I was just a kid
Well, and
myself.
it was absolutely. And about that time is when, dyslexia is covered under the Individuals with Disabilities Act. A lot of people don't know that, but um, in schools we're not identifying students, and it was wrong. In the
Wow.
90s, eh, early 90s, late 80s, that's when they really started a push towards identifying. And that's when the school district that I'm working in now, that's when they started identifying students. Think about that, early
Wow.
90s.
That's so
And
scary.
it
Yeah,
is because there's so many adults that
and
don't
that's what happened with
know.
my daughter. They didn't ever test her. They
Mm,
didn't test her until 5th grade. And
wow.
she was born in 1995.
Mm, yes.
So you're talking about an 11-year-old, you
Wow.
know? And it was 4th
Yes.
grade when they thought she might have it, but didn't test her then. And
See, and
we
mm,
gave her manga. It's a kind of a anime book. You read it backwards for one, so you read it back cover to forward cover, and then they're in little bubbles. The text are in bubbles versus straight lines, and that helped her
wow.
learn to read. So I was buying manga at $10 a book, 2 and 3 books a week, because it
Wow.
was getting her to read. And now she's 26 and
Yeah.
she's reading, I think at a high school level, low high school level.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge progress considering she couldn't read at all until 4th grade.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
and then they
Yeah.
realized because they knew that she had processing delay, but they never thought to test her for dyslexia. But yet she always had her
Wow.
shoes on the wrong feet. She never knew left and right. She never, there was just so many things
Mm.
she couldn't do. But I guess she didn't meet some of the criteria of what they thought a dyslexic would have. I don't know. And then they realized that she
Wow.
actually had it, which is really frustrating. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I know a lot of people who didn't find out until college or beyond, or, adulthood. One
Yeah.
of my friends, their his dad was tested as an adult, and he through a tutor was able to read for the first time, and it was just an amazing story. So there's so many adults that, like Richard Branson, I don't know if I can mention, um
Yeah, of course you can.
Richard Branson, he dropped out of high school, and because of the reading and
Yeah.
dyslexia. But it didn't stop, and we're not all going to be famous, and I tell my students that, we're not all famous, we're not going to be all billionaires, but um, we can follow our dreams, and we can learn to read, but it's going to be hard, but you can do it.
Yeah,
And that's just,
definitely.
so important. So,
Definitely.
yeah, absolutely. So,
I'm so
um,
glad you realized that you were able to do these things, the 3D thinking, and because of that you were creative and smart and that so,
yeah,
and I think that's amazing. So want to tell me about this next tunnel?
yeah, yeah. And one thing about VR too is when I started creating a year ago in Horizon is when I found the love of putting that 3D thinking into practice, because I was using 3D shapes to build, and it
Oh,
was just so
great.
joyful to do that. So I connect that, and I find it as relaxing, and something that I love to do now. So it's just
Oh, that's
a
good.
neat side. But these are
Yeah.
just jumbled, those letters just jumbled again, and you can work on it and work on it, and that's why repetition is so important for a dyslexic learner. um, it just takes so many times of repetition to
Yeah.
learn that. So this tunnel straight ahead, um, elementary school was hard, middle school was hard, um,
Yeah.
high school got better, the grades got better, and they continued to get better through remediation and the help I received from a private tutor that helped me. And then I was able to attend college. And, you know, just that alone, it was hard. But there's so many ways that now even students, the technology that they have now is amazing. The audiobooks, and there's thousands and thousands of audiobooks for them. Just at the touch of a button, just a Google search, and you know, or an app that they have, and they can get any audiobook and listen to it. Because dyslexics, you know, they can, when they listen to a book read, it's so much easier than reading it and trying to figure out the words. But they still get the vocabulary and the content from the book. So I didn't have that. I found a few things on tape, on cassette tape, but that was all. And I would actually go home on the weekends, and my mom would read long chapters to me out loud.
Wow. Now, did you have Dragon Speak back then? Dragon Speak, for those who don't know, is an audio, so you speak into it, and then it converts it to text.
Wow.
So I didn't know if you had that or not. Okay.
No.
So now,
we use speech to text. Oh, so.
Yeah. So now we have Microsoft Office, which has a rudimentary free program, and I say rudimentary because it doesn't do the periods and commas and things like that. But at least it gets the words onto the page most of the time. But Dragon Speak is hundreds of dollars, and the other one comes with the program. So that's the only reason why I mentioned that.
And even now, you know, when I'm a teacher, so when I do online trainings, I have my computer read to me paragraphs, and I understand it so much better. Even though I can read, it just takes me longer to read it, and I understand it better if I can hear it. So it's just amazing to have that. But I made it. I graduated college with a Bachelor of Science degree, and now students have, you know, all the technology available through a laptop or a device. And
I'm just trying to get a good view of the whole room.
Oh yeah.
I can imagine, like, I'm looking at this room, you have it big and spacious, but these words are even bigger. Like, the weight of the words is really felt in the size of the room. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I was just looking at that juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Wow. I love this outside of your dorm room view too.
Mm. Yeah, and we can go out there if you would like.
Oh, another ramp. I love it. I love the water fountain features.
Oh, thank you. I use a lot of water. It's very calming to me. In my worlds. But I have the graduation hats flipping in the air, because I did graduate. It took me an extra semester, but that's okay. Than, you know, most students, but
there's lots of students who take extra years, you know, for all different reasons, and a semester, well, I'm sure it was costly and time consuming and frustrating. I mean, that's really, in my opinion, amazing that you got the degree. I don't have a degree, you know, so I see it as a huge, huge accomplishment, and I admire you so much. Everything you've been able to do, the things that you're doing for these children. I see your posts, and I'm just like, yes, finally a good teacher.
Aw, thank you.
You know, I just wish everybody was more like you, and you know.
Well, and I tell my students, you know, I know not all of them will go to college, and college, it's not for everyone. I know that. And so I'm really cautious about that as well. And I tell them, you know what, you're going to do what you're supposed to do, and you're going to follow your dreams, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to give up. Whatever you do, don't ever give up. And
No,
that's what
definitely not.
what I really stress is I want you to work hard, and whatever you do in the future, it's going to be amazing, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. And
Yep.
so, yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, I tell them everybody has a place and a purpose and what they are supposed to be doing. If we didn't have everyone doing those things, then the world wouldn't work. It wouldn't.
No, of course not.
It wouldn't. So I really stress that, you know, some will go to college and some won't, and that's okay, because you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, and that's important. So
that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So let's go back up this ramp and down the tunnel.
Yeah, we'll go.
I love the idea of the tunnel too, because, you know, there's a term called tunnel vision, where, you know, teachers, not, you know, obviously not you, but some teachers get tunnel vision. Like, there's only this one way of doing things. And so I really love this idea of the tunnel, that you have to kind of break out of it and look differently.
Yes, absolutely.
Is this the way we go now?
Yes. To the left. Yep. Or did I say left correctly? Yes. And then finally the letters, right here. And the letters are in order here. So eventually, you know, they do straighten out. And, you know, with time, it takes a long time for a dyslexic to learn to read, but it is possible. And it is possible for them to do that. So the letters have finally come together here.
And, but you did say sometimes you still have trouble with the B's and D's.
Sometimes you do, yeah.
Now see how the A, see how this A is here with the little curly Q at the top? Does stuff like that help, or does that still just become more of a jumbled mess? Like cursive versus
it
does not.
Yeah, and what we do, we teach them to write in cursive, but we read in print. So everything they read for us is in print, but we teach them to write in cursive because the cursive handwriting flows from letter to letter, and it doesn't stop, as our brain doesn't stop as we're writing. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm teaching cursive now. Uphill.
So we're going uphill now. And so we're getting out of the tunnels now.
I'm just going to go back through and read all of these. So we have the alphabet in the correct order: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Creative, smart, artistic, and talented. And we're going uphill. So there's still more battles when you're going uphill? Is that what the idea is there?
Well, yeah, and we're also coming out of the tunnels.
Okay.
Now. So we're out of the tunnel and we're opening up.
Cool.
And this would be the after college career, the next step in life as they move, as the students move forward.
Wow. Love it. I love this picture on the wall.
Oh, thank you.
And then you have all of these: dyslexia, never give up, successful, read, spell check, creator, dreamer. Yes. Never give up, you can do anything. This is incredible. This really is incredible. You've done such an amazing job of explaining it. Wow.
And then
Then we get back to the beginning of this.
Then we go down and we have the book again.
Yeah. Spell. Read with your ears. I love that.
And you have the headphones now. That the technology piece that saves our reading.
Yeah.
And dyslexia went from being a sad thing that, you know, we were not proud of, and that made us feel dumb, into something that is a strength, and something that I find that because I think differently, it's an amazing thing, and it's not a bad thing anymore. It's something that I think positively about, and I'm really proud of being dyslexic now. And so I remember the past, and I remember the hurt and the difficulties, but without that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And without that, I wouldn't be as strong as I am now. So I'm thankful for those struggles. I truly am. So
I just wanted to focus on this because this is still such a misunderstood diagnosis. You know, like I said, 1995 is when my daughter was born, and not figuring it out until she was 10. So what is that, 2005, 2006, and we're only in 2021. You know what I mean? It's like, or we are in 2021. It took that many years to, and I wonder how many kids are still not being found, you know, falling through the cracks. Yeah,
there's a lot. And I see posts online. It is every day, you know, parents begging for evaluations, parents, you know, begging for answers, and when it could be found really quickly and easily. And, you know, a lot of schools are denying those simple things that could help a dyslexic learner. Still, it's a fight. When I was in high school, a high school teacher told me dyslexia was not real.
Wow.
And so that made a really big impact on my, you know, now as a teacher, I'm like, I would never say that to any student, because it is real, and it is something that is a struggle. And it's just, I have another, I don't know, a middle school substitute also told me that I was slow in front of the class. He didn't know me. And so I don't fault those people, because back then they honestly did not know about dyslexia. You know, yes, I was angry, I was upset, but it doesn't, those people, they honestly didn't know what it was. And so I really feel very strongly about getting kids tested and getting them the help they need, and saying, you know what, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And telling parents, you know what, it's going to be okay. That your kid will be okay. They will be okay. And so, you know, that's just a really personal thing that happened, but it marked me. I remember that to this day, exactly what it looked like, where I was sitting, everything. So,
it's
educating people, and letting them know 1 in 5 learners have a learning disability. Think about that. I mean, that's a lot of kids that are not being identified. So, we really need to find them and get them identified.
Well, it's frustrating because where I live, they say that only, I hate this, and I hate even saying it because it's so frustrating for me, that poor kids are the ones that have learning disabilities and the rich kids don't. And
what?
I'm like, yeah, that's a big stigma where I'm living.
Yeah.
I live in southern New Hampshire. And they say that the reason why these kids are on IEPs is because the parents don't do what they're supposed to do. Now, I'm not going to say that's not true in all the cases. Maybe there are some cases of that. But not in all cases, you know?
No.
And
no, not at all.
And rich kids and poor kids and kids in between. And how about just use the term children have difficulties in school, and every child should be tested so that no child is missed. Every child gets tested. That is my goal.
Yes. And you know, it's interesting that you said rich and poor. Well, I've worked in both schools. I worked in economically disadvantaged, where most of the school was, And then I worked in extremely wealthy schools. And you know, they both have tons of dyslexics that we're finding. They all have kids in special ed. You know, it doesn't matter if you read to your child every single night of their entire life. Your child's still dyslexic because they were born that way. It doesn't mean that, you know, if they went to the fanciest preschool that that's going to help the dyslexia. Now, it will kind of give them a better base maybe, or a foundation, but it's not going to change the fact that because they had prep or not, that they're going to be dyslexic. And that is not a good thinking. That is not true at all.
I think that's a general theme of the most amazing people I've ever met. You have the hurdles, you overcome the hurdles, you face them, and you just keep going. And like I said, seeing what you do with the children just via your posts, you know, online, and then also knowing that you're such an integral part of the Blue Wave Studios with the filming and the acting, and your editing, and you're just doing all of these amazing things. And you will have to check out Tina's other worlds because she has a lot of them.